All right, back to the cleverest guy, Rich. On this clip from the Tuesday Morning Ad Clinic, Rich gets his hands dirty and writes postcards with a cabinet refacer. Well, they don't just reface. They can replace and refurbish and stain and something else. I'll let them explain. Announcer?
Number 4.
Everybody knows, every single person knows that if they want to get their cabinets to look better, that there's somebody out there that can help them. Now, they don't necessarily know what all the options are. I think most people would assume that the main way to get new cabinets is to get new cabinets.
Right.
Do you find that to be true?
We do.
So you've got all these really cool, unique, cost-effective, interesting ways of solving this problem that aren't coming out here on this postcard. So it's likely to be clumped mentally with, oh, here's somebody that replaces cabinets. And I can't even tell from the photos that you've done anything other than just come in and replace the cabinets.
Sure. That makes sense, and that's really what we need to push is that we don't, the majority of our business is not tearing out and putting in new cabinets. There's a lot of ways to do that that will not disrupt your life, that won't take a long time, that doesn't cause a huge mess.
That's really what I want to speak to, not just on the back. You start coming in here on the back with some of these different ways to do it, but I think what we want to do is find some ways to talk about it here on the front that are interesting and unique. And realistically, I would like to find 10 or 15 or 20 different ways to talk about this. Now, to that end, have you gone through the methodology workbook and used different John Smith headlines and or headline starter headlines to write headlines for this?
No, I haven't done that.
Okay, because here's the major hot button that I want to hit. It's an objection to ownership hot button. The biggest objection to cabinets, okay, is it's going to take a long time, it's going to be a mess, it's going to be expensive, and these are objections to fixing my cabinet problem. Mm-hmm. This is where your company really exists, right?
Absolutely.
Your message is not, hey, if your cabinets are old and they suck, we've got new ones that we'll come and put in. Yeah, we happen to can do that, but that's not our company's message. So why would somebody want to get new cabinets? Well, they want to get new cabinets because it looks better. They want to get new cabinets because their old ones are embarrassed, because they're old, they're tired, they're outdated, and all those different things. What are the objections? Takes too long, costs too much money, too big of a mess. Are those probably the biggest three?
Yes. Yep, and that's where I sent the trust points along, too, because we did a focus group a long time ago to find out exactly what people's objections were, and so those are exactly it. They think it's going to take a long time, that it's super expensive, that it's a big mess, and they don't trust contractors.
Yeah, next time instead of doing a focus group, just ask me and I'll tell you in 10 seconds.
You could have told us.
Well, and the reason is because it's fairly obvious. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't do focus groups, but, you know, it's pretty obvious. And if you get over here into vendor selection, well, why should they do business with you? The answer is, well, we got all these different things that we do. But the reality is, if we just start hitting these objections to ownership, and the solution is the vendor selection, it's what do you do? So it costs too much money, it takes too much time, it's too much of a mess, and you can't trust contractors. The solution is your vendor selection hot button of we've got different methods.
Absolutely.
Okay? So this is where we need to write. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull open a methodology workbook, and I'm going to shortcut this a little bit for time, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the objections to ownership, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and start writing some headlines. I'm going to write some John Smith headlines and some headline starter headlines. So the first one is John Smith headlines. And here's how we do this. We look at what is the problem that John Smith has that's causing him problems, and what would John Smith be saying? Well, the problem that John Smith has when it comes to doing kitchens is it's too expensive. This is everything we just said. The money, the time, the mess, and the contractor. So I'm going to write some John Smith statements, and we're going to see if we can make these into headlines or not. So I might say something like this. I'd love to replace my kitchen cabinets, but with the down economy, I just don't have the time, I just don't have the money to spare right now. Okay, so that's a John Smith statement. Simply put, this is what John Smith might be saying as he or she, and I'll just use the John Smith male version he for ease of conversation, when in fact it might be Jane Smith. But and nevertheless, this is what John Smith might be saying to himself or as he's talking to his spouse when it comes to the thought of replacing kitchen cabinets. I'd love to replace my kitchen cabinets, but with a down economy, I just don't have the money to spare right now. And I'll just come up with a few different versions of this, focusing maybe on a couple of these different hot buttons, time, mess, and so forth. I'd like to replace my kitchen cabinets, but the last thing I want is a month-long mess that displaces me from my house and what? And I'll throw another hot button in here, and cost a fortune. Okay? This is my John Smith statement. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to create these into headlines going across my methodology workbook.
If you haven't started filling out a methodology workbook for your business, you're crazy. Sure, it's a lot of work on the front end, but once you have the work done, you can throw an ad together for any deadline. And you can test and test and test. I started a workbook on voice talent during this countdown. I think my hottest hot button so far is benefit of ownership, sex appeal.